Welcome to the Skirted Professional Podcast, a place where women of all different walks of life come together to share their journeys and wisdom they've learned along the way. We're so excited that you're part of this community. We hope you always leave this space feeling encouraged, inspired, and a little less alone. The Skirted Professional is brought to you by C Saucy, a medical apparel company that specializes in modern scrub skirt sets for the working woman. Their goal is to give every woman the option to wear a skirt in their workplace without compromising the comfort, style, or functionality of their scrubs. You can check them out at csaucy.com. That's CSAUCY.com. All right, without further ado, let's get to today's episode. We are so honored to have Krystal Riley as our guest today. She is an attorney at law, a mom to 3 wonderful kids. She's also a podcast host of In a Skirt podcast, as well as a marathon runner. Krystal, I can't wait to hear more from you today. Welcome to the Skirted Professional Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, I can tell you're in your law office right now. I see some dignified things on the wall behind you.
Just maps. Yeah.
Yeah. I bet your diplomas are like on the other side.
Yeah, they're in front of me. Mm-hmm.
In front of you. Okay, awesome. Well, we're so excited to hear from you today. As I was reading your intro and writing that, I kind of got out of breath thinking about everything that you do. Marathon runner, mom, lawyer, all of the above. So we would love to hear about your background and kind of what started you on the journey into becoming a lawyer. And then we'd love to transition into the running and you being a marathon runner. So I'm going to let you take it away. Tell our listeners who you are.
Yeah. So I have 3 kids, and out of everything I do, that's the most difficult. I've got a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And so they are wild children, which I think children should be wild, but they are wild and they keep me on my toes. In fact, just this week, I mean, because of my kids, I've gotten a speeding ticket and been late to work and spilled pickles on the backseat of my car. I mean, it's just been, but I love the craziness of being a mom.
Sure.
I've been an attorney for 14 years. So I practice in Lufkin, Texas. It's a great little town. It's where Texas Bible College is located, and it's the where the district offices for the Texas district of the UPC are located.
Awesome.
So it's a great place. Great firm. We have about 12 attorneys here, and it's been an enormous blessing. God worked my whole career path out for me. Yes, I'm originally from South Texas on the border, and I moved to East Texas to go to college at Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches. And while I was there, I met a guy going to JCM. Nobody who's younger even knows what JCM is anymore because it's been closed for so long.
Jackson Bible College?
Jackson College of Ministries in Jackson, Mississippi. And so it was just through this strange series of events we ended up meeting, and so we got engaged very quickly. I'm a very assertive go-getter person, so about 2 months after I met him, I told him that we were going to get married, and he was like, okay. So we got married. Awesome. And he moved to Nacogdoches, graduated from JCM and moved to Nacogdoches, and we just never left East Texas. It just always felt like even though he was from Louisiana and I was from South Texas, it just felt like a great place to be. So we moved a little bit south of Nac to Lufkin, and I commuted to law school in Houston.
Okay.
And there was a guy going to my church, and his brother is an attorney. And so I said, hey, does your brother need any help? I need a part-time job. And so I got a job with his brother, Marty Barnhill, Sarah Barnhill's dad, and working part-time while I went to law school. And so for a few years, I drove back and forth to Houston from Lufkin, which is 120 miles each way.
Wow.
And I worked at this law office in Lufkin and had my first kid. And so I was very thankful to be done with law school. I graduated in 2008. My oldest son was 2 years old when I graduated.
Wow.
and it was just nice not to have to drive to Houston
Yes,
or go to
sure.
school anymore.
What a
And
sacrifice.
yes, but it ended up working out perfectly. I was young,
Yeah,
and I always look back now that I'm about to be 40, and I always think, oh, I could never do that now, but when
right.
you're in your 20s, you don't have to sleep.
Do
You
whatever
can
you want to do.
do
Yeah.
whatever. So that, I got through it, and we were fine doing that. And it worked out perfectly, though, because by the time I graduated from law school, I already had this part-time job at this law firm, and I just kind of fit in. And so when I was done taking the bar exam, I just segued from being their law clerk
Yeah.
to an associate attorney with them. And had that not happened, had not God put the Barnhills in my path,
Yeah.
or actually the financial need for a part-time job, I don't know if it would have ever worked out so perfectly. So I
Yeah.
was able to take the bar and just right away start here, and I've been here ever since. So 14 years as an attorney, 15 years total, including when I started working for them when I was in law school. And it's been wonderful. So I have a great group of
Wow.
partners, great coworkers. We get to do a lot of stuff. We have a great law practice at this firm, but we also get the small town
Yeah.
life, so I leave when I need to go get my kids. My kids come to work with me when they need to. So last week I had my 5-year-old daughter with me here all week. So
I'm sure your clients actually really like that.
well, it's funny because it's totally different than it was a couple of decades ago. People are, for better or for worse, people are more casual all the way
Yeah.
around.
Yes.
Yeah, and I like it. People
Mhm.
understand that families come first a lot
Right.
more than they did a generation ago. People are a lot more accepting of working parents, whether working moms or working dads, and being
Yes.
involved in their kids' lives. So yeah, they're pretty much fine with it, and the thing is, if I need to work from home, I work from home. I've got a laptop, and all
Yeah.
my calls are forwarded to my cell phone. And so the trade-off is I will answer my phone wherever I am, if I'm cooking dinner, if I'm on vacation, and just I'm very, very accessible to my clients.
Yeah.
Just know that there's going to be a kid yelling in the background or a
Yes.
dog barking. So
Yes. Sure.
yeah. Yeah. And I've been amazed with how accepting my clients are of that. Very, very accepting. I've taken a kid to meet with a big client when I had nowhere else for him to go. Just told
Wow.
him, sit there and hush. And,
Yeah. Don't say
my,
a word.
right. And my clients were like, yeah, I mean, they didn't care. One of them
Do what
had
you gotta do.
his dog in his lap, and, so
Yeah.
I'm all for people being more accepting of having your kids and your dogs with you.
I
So
love it.
yes. And I've brought my dogs to work too.
I
So
love it. I don't have the kids yet, but I have the
yeah.
dog.
Yes.
And I will say my current job right now, I'm able to bring him to my office every day if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yes. We've had, for a good part of this summer, we've had at least one dog at the office.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. But at least one dog. Mm-hmm.
Well, so cool. Now tell me about what drove you into wanting to become a lawyer? Was that a family, passed down that dad was a lawyer, or did you have, are you the first one in your family to become a
Yes,
lawyer?
I am. I'm the first one in my family. So great parents. My dad has a little trucking company. Always
Okay.
drove a truck. Very labor intensive type of
Yeah.
work. And my mother was a teacher. She taught public school for 25 years. And my dad did not go to college, and his parents did not go to college. My dad's father had to drop out of school at 5th grade and
Wow.
start working and supporting himself then. And it was just a very tough life for all of them.
Yeah.
Hard worker though, ended up doing very well for himself with only a 5th grade education. And so my dad tried college, but he had learned from his dad, back then in the 70s, you didn't really need college. You just
Right.
needed to be able to work hard. So that's what he did. And my mom was the first person in her family to go to college. So she grew up in Louisiana and graduated from high school, married my dad, very young, like people
Yeah.
did, back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, had her family very young. And after she had already had her 2 kids, my dad told her, he said, "You're really smart. You should go to college." And so he kind of forced her into going to college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she loved it. She loved it. She got a degree in computer programming and then got another degree in primary education and really thrived in that. And so she taught school, and they raised us very differently from how
Yeah.
they were raised. And so from the time we were very young, they told us, "You're going to go to college, you're going to do, all these other things, have all these opportunities we didn't have." They started
Sure.
taking me on college tours when I was in 5th grade. So
Wow.
driving all over Texas to help us visit schools. And so that was always, you're not going to have to live like we did, it's
Yeah.
going to be very different. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do, because now that I've got a 16-year-old, I, can look back and think, oh, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. To tell a kid like, oh, what are you going to do with your life? Oh, I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm a kid. So I went to SFA and I got a degree in journalism and political science, and I had no clue. And
Wow.
the joke later became that I went to law school because I wanted to buy more time to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I was just trying to get into different grad schools or law school or something, because I was pretty overwhelmed. I was already married, but I still
Yeah.
couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I had read an article somewhere where if you were going to if you're going to choose between grad school and law school, pick law school, and that you didn't actually have to be a lawyer, but there were a lot of jobs out there who were looking for people with JDs,
Yeah.
Juris Doctorates, and maybe that that was like the new MBA or something. And so I went to law school, and it was about halfway through law school when I realized I was going to have to be a lawyer. Because I had accumulated so much in debt. I was like, oh, I think I'm going to have to do this whole lawyer thing, because all of these other jobs aren't going to
Not
pay
gonna
the
cut
bills.
it.
No, nope. And so then about that time, I got the job at the firm where I work now, and they were great in training me. So by the time I graduated from law school, I could be a lawyer and hit the
Yeah.
ground running.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
so you don't have to know what you're going to do
Right.
when you're younger. You can be halfway through law school before you even realize you want to be a lawyer.
I love it that was just kind of like I need to go to school because I have to get a job, so I'm just going
Right.
to go to law school.
Yeah. I had no idea it was going to be so expensive. I didn't think it all the way through, but it worked out. And that's, some of those parts of life where you look back when you're older and you realize it wasn't really that you made great decisions, is that you had a praying mom and you ended up on the right path.
Yeah.
Despite yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So God was there kind of leading and pushing in different directions, even when I didn't realize what was going on, and it all worked out.
That's awesome. So we have a lot of different age groups that listen to this podcast, and a lot of them are educationally driven.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's start with the student who is trying to get into law school, or that is their goal. Go back to when you were trying to get in with taking the LSATs and all of the things that it takes to get into law school. And I specifically have my sister-in-law in mind because she wants to go to law school. What would you tell them? So if a score comes back lower, or they get a hiccup in the road and they don't think there's any way they can get in, take us back to when you were in that position and kind of give some insight into what you would instruct them.
Well, the good thing about the LSAT is, I guess it's the same, is that you can take it again, so if you don't, and tests like the LSAT, if you don't do that great the first time around, really it's one of those tests where you kind of need to take it one time to get a feeler for it, kind of get a feel for it, what it's like. I took it once. I don't remember. I don't think I did like that great. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I think I've pushed all of the studying out of my mind because it was traumatic. Yeah, exactly. But the wonderful thing about law school is you don't have to have any particular undergrad degree.
Okay.
So it's not like if you're going to go to medical school, then you need to have a biology degree or something. You don't have to have any particular undergrad degree. And I remember when I first started law school, everybody there had a different degree. And in my office, you know, I have political science and journalism. One of my partners has a psychology degree. One has a finance degree. I think one has like an engineering degree. One has a business. It's all different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where you can go through college and you don't have to be focused on a pre-law degree. And if you have a good GPA, that kind of outweighs a lower LSAT score. So if you have a good GPA and if you can interview well, then those can always overcome, you know, maybe not that great of an LSAT score, or take it again, you know. So
awesome.
I feel like it's kind of where they were when I got in, you know, a little bit more lenient in what your undergrad background was in. So
okay, so now let's move to the individual listening who is in the middle of law school. And what is their encouragement that you would provide them?
It gets better, maybe. So yeah, law school is, I think some people enjoyed it a lot more than I did because they didn't have a kid or a commute.
Sure.
Personally, I hated it. I hated every minute of it.
It was an ends to a me.
Yeah, it was. It was just one of those things. Yeah, it, you know, and we were young and we were broke and we had this kid, and so it was like pack a sandwich, eat a sandwich in the back of class, and just trying to, you know, be like very inconspicuous and get through it. But it's a great opportunity to learn how to really push yourself, to get out of your comfort zone. It prepares you for public speaking, even when you don't realize that it's preparing you. It prepares you for a lot of different things, which I think is why it translates so well into different fields, why people can have a JD and not become a lawyer and become all these other different things, because it teaches you how to write, it teaches you how to think, it teaches you how to speak, it teaches you how to study, it teaches you how to zone in and focus on what you need to focus in on. But it's worth it. You know, I don't know a whole lot of people who didn't think eventually that it was worth it. And it's hard, but it's appropriately hard. If you're going to practice law, you need all of those skills, but it'll be worth it.
So when I look at you, I see a lady who is not afraid to do hard things. And that is something in my life that I feel like the Lord has. It's not a calling to do hard things, but my path is different. Obviously, we each have our own path. And I feel like I have had the experience and the opportunity to really push myself into doing hard things. And that's what I admire you from afar. I know you're a runner and you're a lawyer and all of these things. And so can you talk about the blessings that come from doing those hard things, and now the sacrifices that you made in the beginning, now what you're reaping afterward?
I've always told my kids that anything worth having, worth getting, and worth keeping are hard things. Like the things that come to us easy, they're not the life-changing things. Everything in my life that I appreciate and that I value was not easy. Marriage isn't easy. You know, marriage is one of the most beautiful relationship you can ever have. And it's hard. So, and if you take the easy path in marriage, your marriage isn't going to survive.
Right.
And so I feel like working hard translates into every area of your life, like learning endurance and learning patience. It goes from every area. So if you can learn how to work hard in law school, how to be patient with reaping the rewards from law school, you can then see, okay, well, it's going to be the same for my marriage. It's going to be the same for raising kids. Raising kids is hard. And raising kids the way you need to raise them is hard. I always tell my son that too, because when he's like, oh, you just want to control my life, or
and so their parents would then do this.
Exactly. You know, I tell them if I wanted to be a lazy parent, if I wanted to do parenting the easy way, then I will let you do whatever you want to do. Because telling you no is harder. You know, setting boundaries and restrictions on your kids, being reasonably strict with them is much more difficult than letting them do whatever they want. So anything, having children, being pregnant, you know, we adopted our third child, adopting children, running, all of it pays off. and then you can use it in other areas of your life. I've done this thing. It was difficult. I got through it. I'm reaping the rewards. So now when I'm up against this other challenge in raising kids or in my job or in my marriage, it's okay, because I know that hard things are worth it, and you know, it'll pay off. And I've got a great career. Very, very, very thankful for my career. I know lawyers get a bad rap a lot, but it's been a wonderful blessing to me. The people I work with, the type of work I do, and I really know God wanted me here, even though it took me a while to figure that out. And it's been a blessing. So when I look back on the years of law school or the early years of practicing, you know, when I wasn't as confident 14 years ago, felt very scared. Yeah. And I always got a lot of comments, you know, 14, 15 years ago. Are you sure you're a lawyer? So there, Marty, my partner, used to make fun of me because someone always thought I was his secretary. So, you know, I'd walk into work in the morning, be like, hey, get me a cup of coffee. I'm like, I'm not your secretary. Because
I close this next big client, you're going to realize that I'm
not. Exactly. Yeah. He was just, you know, trying to give me a hard time because I was in my early 20s. And so people would ask that. Unfortunately, nobody ever asks me if I'm too young to be an attorney anymore. And that kind of hurts my feelings now too.
Oh, you still look great.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think you're, you know, I was reading that scripture the other day when it talks about patience. In one version of the Bible, I forgot which one I was reading, had it translated as endurance instead of patience. And that really kind of hit home with me. You know, living for God requires a lot of patience, but if you use the word endurance instead, you know, and if you're a runner, then you think about endurance. And if you're a parent staying up at night, you think about endurance. And endurance is something that's very, very beneficial to you to have, whether it's in your job, in parenting, or in your walk with God, because walking with God requires a lot of endurance, because he's an on-time God, but in our human mind, he takes a really long time to work his plan. So you need that patience and that endurance to see what he's got coming later.
That's so true. And I feel like through those times, he is allowing us to build up the discipline that it takes to do the hard things, knowing that discipline in one area of your life is going to then help get every other area in check. If we're disciplined with our eating, or in your case with running, you're doing that hard thing every day. So like you said, with parenting, okay, this seems hard, but I'm building up that discipline to be able to handle it. And I remember my husband and I went to Sedona, Arizona, about 2 years ago, and we were going on all these crazy hikes. And one of the hikes was like 4.5 miles, and they called it Devil's Bridge. And I remember the last probably half mile, I was on my hands and knees trying to make it up the rest of the way. And everyone kept saying, oh, you have to get to the top. It's so beautiful and it's going to be worth it. And in the moment, you could have told me there was $1 million up top. It was not going to matter to me. Finally get up there, the most beautiful sight I had ever seen in my life. And I just remember thinking, hard things yield beautiful results.
Oh, yes.
Always. And it's a blessing at the end of it. And you look back and you're like, that was really hard during it, but now I'm set up for the rest of my life to experience the beauty of what that discipline and that hard work paved for me, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's true. In every area of your life. That's true.
Yeah. So speaking of hard things, let's transition away from being a lawyer into being a marathon runner. And I have a feeling that both of these stories kind of collided, and maybe running was a stress outlet for you. I don't know that, but I wanted to hear your journey on how you became a runner and what it's led to for you.
Yeah, I started running 10 years ago. I was coming up on my 30th birthday, which I thought was depressing then. And now as I come up on my 40th, and I love my job. I love being a lawyer. I've always had the type of personality that I have to do a lot of things, and I have to do them well, and I have to do everything, and I have to have a high stress, atmosphere around me. And that's how I thrive. But it was stressful. And at that time, my children, I just had the 2 boys at the time. And so my youngest was 3, and I just felt tired. I felt exhausted because a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they were, active, trying to juggle them and the job. And I think any parent, regardless of their job or their career, when their kids are at that age, just suddenly realize like they don't know who they are anymore, and they don't have a life, and they don't have, which is fine. I want my life to revolve around my kids, but you just kind of feel lost. You don't know where you're going, what you're doing. You don't eat right. You don't feel great because you're just, a lot of times my meal was whatever they had left over when I was cleaning up the kitchen or something. And so I just wanted to not feel, I didn't want to feel bad. I didn't want to, I wanted to lose weight after having the second kid, and I wanted to feel better, and I wanted to sleep better. And so I started walking every day. And then my brother kind of just told me because he would run off and on. He was like, "Oh, you should try running." And I said, "Well, I don't really run." He said, "Well, how do you know? Have you ever tried running?"
Right.
And so that kind of just stuck in my head. And also, time schedule, I just figured, well, if I ran, then I'd get home or get done with it faster than if I walked.
That's so true.
Yeah. So I just started waking up early and trying to run a little bit, a little that I think when I first started, I couldn't even run 1/8 of a mile without feeling like I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I mean, eventually I could just run a little bit more every day, and I felt more awake. I felt more alert. I felt like my mind was sharper when I got it done. And I realized that if I woke up earlier and got less sleep, but went out and did this thing, was just outside and sweating and moving my body, that I had a much better day. So I felt like I had woken up finally, and got the blood moving and could be more clear-headed. And I just ended up liking it, really, really liking it. And it just, one thing led to another. And before I knew it, my brother had convinced me to sign up for a half marathon, and then someone convinced me to sign up for a marathon. And it's one of those strange things where, you don't always like it while you're doing it, or you're ready to stop, but it's like brushing your teeth. It eventually just becomes part of your daily routine. Yeah. And you feel odd if you don't do it.
Wow.
So yeah. And it's brought me a lot of good relationships, a lot of friendships, helped me feel really a lot more confident about myself, because I never thought I could run a half marathon. And then when I ran the first half marathon, I was like, oh wow, I did something that I really thought I could never do. And then when I ran my first marathon, just for the first time in my life, I thought, you can really do things. Like you can do things that you thought you couldn't do. You can train your mind and train your body and do things that you used to laugh at or think that was ridiculous. Like, how cool, what else could I do? What else could I do? So
wow. So how does it look training for a marathon? What was your routine every day running?
Yeah. So I've been, after that first one, I've just kept at it because I enjoy it so much. And then I just set different goals. And so normally when I'm training for a marathon, like right now I'm in a training plan where I'm training for a half marathon, and I like to double up on races. And so training for a half marathon to be immediately followed by a marathon. Okay. So with the kids in school, that looks like waking up at 4 a.m. Wow. So yeah, when kids are in school, you have such limited time with them on a daily basis that I really don't like stealing my time away from them. So I tried to do all of it before they would ever wake up, because I don't want to ruin my evenings with them. I'm a real homebody. I don't do a lot of stuff outside of the home. And I'm not a hugely social person, because I love being with my husband and kids. And I'm very jealous and protective of that time. Like when work is over, I want to be at home with my family. So I wake up at 4 a.m, during the weekdays, and I run Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and then do a long run on Saturdays. And so during the week, I wake up at 4, go get it done. So I'm home by 6:15, so I can get my kids ready for school. I also think it's very important to have conversations with them in the morning, pray with them on the way to school, do all of that. And it won't interfere at all with my time in the evening. Now, thankfully, I have a 5-year-old daughter who has to go to bed early. So that's my excuse to my husband and my older kids. Like, Lily needs to go to bed because she's 5. So I'm going to go lay down with her at 7:30 or 8, you know, so we have our family time. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
So it's going to bed early, waking up early. And then on Saturdays, I usually try to get it early so I can be home the rest of the day, because that's my only day to do laundry and
so on your Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday runs, are you running 3 miles? How do you space that out in your training phase?
Yeah, it's all over the place. Mondays are speed work, and it's anywhere from 6 to 10 miles worth of speed work. Wednesdays are tempo runs.
I can't even fathom.
So Wednesdays are usually 7 to 12 miles of speed work, and then Thursdays and Fridays are they're usually 5 milers that are very slow, as slow as I can possibly make them. So ironically, you need to run slower to get faster. So so most of your runs, you know, if you're doing speed work twice a week, then all your other runs need to be as slow as you can possibly make them while still moving. So Thursdays and Fridays are usually 5 milers, and they're slow. I run with a friend, and we complain and vent and do all of that, and then talk about what we're going to eat. And then Saturdays are long runs. So long runs are anywhere from 10 to 22 miles, just depending on where we are in the training schedule. So
that's amazing.
Yes.
So amazing. Wow. And I'm sure we have some other runners on this podcast that you need to go go to her Instagram page, In a Skirt Podcast, and look at her photos. You recently did the Boston Marathon.
Yes. That was so much fun.
How incredible is that?
It was just amazing. I took the whole family. So my mom and all 3 of my kids and my husband, and we had never been to Boston. So first off, we just fell in love with Boston. It was amazing. And the race, I just kept looking around and thinking, oh my goodness, I am running the Boston Marathon. I'm running that. I think I said that to myself like 30 times during the I'm running the Boston Marathon.
The thing we hear about all the time, you know.
Right. I just couldn't believe that I was there.
Yes, as a participant.
Yes, it's super exciting. And if anybody ever gets the opportunity to go watch it, because my kids and my mom and my husband just said on their side of it, watching it was so cool. They said it was just this high energy.
Oh, I'm sure.
Watching people's reactions when they crossed the finish line. They said it was very emotional to watch different people cross the finish line, and and then be able to say, oh, we know someone running it. And it was really cool. I'm hoping to go back again next year. My brother just moved to Newport, Rhode Island.
Wow.
A couple months ago. And so that's very close to Boston. And so I'm thinking, well, I could go back next year and not have to take everybody, and I can stay with him and do it again.
Well, that is truly an inspiration. And I know someone else listening is going to be inspired by that. And if you are listening and you love running, go to her page, In a Skirt Podcast, or even follow her personally, and you can see and keep up with her journeys on that. And reach out to her for encouragement too, because I'm sure it goes a long way in running marathons. That is crazy, crazy cool. I love it.
Thank you.
So the last component that I want to hear about in all of this is something that unifies you and I very closely. And that is, when I was going through nursing school, I wanted to be able to rock my profession while still feeling professional and modern, and still allow myself to hold the convictions that I hold. And that is, I prefer to wear a skirt, and wherever I'm at, I prefer to wear a skirt. And it's no coincidence that your podcast is called In a Skirt Podcast. Yes. And upon further research, you run every marathon or any race that you run, you're in a skirt.
Yes. I've never run in anything other than a skirt.
In a skirt. So talk us through some of that and maybe your experience with going to the Boston Marathon and being the one in a skirt or any other area that you're at. Have you had any complications with that, or do you have any success stories that you want to share?
Yeah. So when I first started running, I thought people were going to be more critical. And I think I've always taken that approach in life, just assuming that more people are watching what you're doing and wondering, and, you know, everybody's doing their own thing and they don't always notice you as much as right. Exactly. And I've had some questions about it. And most of the questions, I think one guy ran next to me in a race for a while and he had a ton of questions. And what's ironic is it's usually men who have way more questions than women. So I'm thinking women have been doing a lot of cool things in skirts for like ever since the beginning of time. So it's always men like, oh, what are you doing? Is it really your issue that I'm in a skirt, or they usually have more of an issue with women doing things in general? So
we can dissect that.
Right. So that's been ironic that most of my questions have been from men. Why I was wearing that, how it was made, were the leggings stitched in, did it prevent me from right? Yeah. So it's like, it's just a skirt with leggings. Okay, it's just a skirt with leggings.
Keep going.
Yeah, bye. Pass me or let me pass you. But I was raised Pentecostal. So my mom's dad was a Pentecostal preacher. He became my mom's family got in church when my mom was 12. Okay. So by the time I came along, it was just, I never had anything, you know, other than skirts, which was a benefit because I never thought they were a hindrance because I was always wearing them. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I was raised in the 80s and 90s and there were no scrub skirts, there were no running skirts, there was none of that. Right. So I think the thing I hated about skirts back then was not wearing them, was not being able to find them. Yeah. And for my mom always trying to make something, and I did not like wearing homemade clothes. So I dropped out of any sports that I could have done in middle school because I didn't like anything. I didn't like any of the options when it came to what you could wear. Yeah. And it wasn't that I was embarrassed about wearing a skirt. There were no skirts. There was no, I was trying to explain this to my kids and they think I'm ancient. There was no dry fit material back then. Yeah. You know, we were all still wearing cotton in the 80s and 90s. And so there was no good material for my mom to even try to make like something.
Athletic blend.
Right. Yeah. There was nothing. So I was like, I'm not going to do this. I guess Pentecostals just can't do a bunch of things, you know, because there's no way to do them. So I am so thankful for companies we have today that provide those type of clothes. And I'm so excited that I get to raise a daughter. Yeah. In this day and age, because my daughter is very athletic. Very athletic, just naturally talented. And I put her in a skirt wherever she goes. And she's never even noticed that no one else has skirts on yet. Like she's never said anything. She's never noticed it. Aww. And that's who I am. I wear a skirt, always called myself a skirt girl. Yeah. That's just always who I'm going to be. And I think also if you kind of decide that you're going to wear a skirt, no exceptions. Yeah. It's a whole lot easier to just do that than to try to, except when I do this or except when I do that. And if I go swimming, if I go cycling, if I go running, and at some point people don't even notice. You're just the person in a skirt. And some people have told me, you know, who would prefer to wear skirts but have been afraid to do it. Hey, thank you. You know, now I know it's not as big of a deal. Yes. And I honestly think that the big setback to a lot of people is not that they think they can't do something, because I've yet to find something that I can't do in a skirt. Yeah, sure. I think the thing is they really think they're going to stand out, but they're going to stick out like a sore thumb, and they don't want to be so conspicuous. So I think that's a big obstacle to some people, because, you know, most people don't want to get noticed all the time. Right. You know, you don't want to, but
let me hide in a corner.
Right, exactly. And there may be an initial, oh, look, that person looks different than everybody else. Yes. But it quickly wears off. Most
Yes,
people
it
are
does.
very, very focused on what they're doing. And so they're not
Right.
as focused on people who look different. And the great thing about the running community is the running community has just really taken off with being okay with people who don't look like professional athletes.
I
You
love
know,
it.
so
Yeah.
it's okay if you're wearing a skirt, or I have a friend who has a permanent feeding tube and she's a runner.
Wow.
You know, all of these differences, you know,
Yeah.
limb differences, or okay, you know, runners don't all have to look like the pros.
Yeah. And I love that, because you're breaking down barriers of
Right.
anyone's accepted into it. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said earlier, to the good and to the bad, this generation is very accepting.
Yes.
We accept everything, and that can be a bad thing.
Right.
But for the most part, when you are a part of a community that makes you stand out and you are different, people, they just let you live your life. You
Right.
do you, and I'm going to do me, and we're not going to judge each other for it. We're going to love each other and know that we can coexist in the same community.
Yes.
And I love that you said it's breaking the barriers for runners who don't necessarily look like the guy you see in the gym, who, you know, okay, he's a pro athlete. It's open for anyone. And I think that is a really, really cool thing about this day and age.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that. And I feel a lot more, it's changed a lot since I was a kid. And so I appreciate that. So between people being a whole lot more accepting than they were a couple decades ago, and the fact that we can buy clothes that make us feel comfortable. You know, I don't have to get a denim skirt and try to go run in that.
Thank you to all the sports skirts companies out there.
I have way too many. Like I'm on subscription with one of them now, because I'm so afraid someone's going to go out of business. Yeah. You know, I spent most of my life without them, that I'm just buying all of them now, because I'm like, I support you. Thank you.
I love it. Yes, that has definitely changed. And in my world, in the scrub world, we're trying to do the same thing. Let's break down those barriers of what a medical professional can look like. And
right, because we're women. What were women doing before? Were they like sewing them themselves, or buying scrub pants and making them into skirts?
They were changing the skirts into pants, and then there would be the occasional one that was available on the market, but it was a big parachute that went down to the mid-thigh in that cotton material, because there was no athletic blend. So kind of paralleling here the athletic world and the medical world, with us coming out with these options of skirts and making it available to anyone and everyone that wants to partake in those professions, in those communities, whether it be running, medical profession, whatever. So,
and I've met a lot of people who they're not, you know, they may not be apostolic. Like I've got some people that I follow who are Orthodox Jews.
Yes.
And so there's actually a professional runner in Israel, BD Deutsch, and she's an Orthodox Jew.
Okay.
So she's a high level pro runner, and she only runs in a skirt, and she also modifies all of her shirts so that they come to her collarbone, and so the sleeves go to her elbows. And so she was supposed to run in the world championships a few weeks ago, but she got injured. But to see a woman on that stage in a skirt, but I have also met people who have zero desire to wear skirts for any type of modesty or conviction standpoint. Yeah. They just prefer them, and they buy from all of these, you know, skirt sports companies as well, and just say they're just comfortable. I just like them. They're just nice to wear and do things in.
It's just options, and that's where we're at. Is we now have options, and you know what used to not be available is available now, and so anyone that wants to participate, hopefully there's an option for them. And I think that's so valuable. And I love that our stories kind of align in areas that we're passionate about. And I have to say, it's so cool to see an apostolic, Holy Ghost filled lady in a skirt at the Boston Marathon, you know, showing up how many other runners that were behind you. And I know that's not what it's about, but what a cool, cool thing to happen. And we're just very inspired by you and love your mission. And
thank you.
Have enjoyed talking to you today.
Yes,
and I know
have too. Thank you.
Several of our listeners will be very ecstatic because I think they can tap into different areas of your life because you're very versatile. So thank you for speaking with us today.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, sharing your wisdom, and we can't wait for this episode to go live. I do have one last question for you.
Sure.
And it's something that we kind of ask everyone at the end of our podcast. And in this season of your life, what is saving your life right now?
What is saving my life? Okay, so I'm a planner and a prepper. So that's just, I can't function without lists and planning and prepping. So I think I'm just getting by right now with food prepping, doing everything the night before. I mean, I don't know if you wanted a product or an idea or
whatever is in your life right now.
Yes. So if you are working and you have kids and you've got to get out of the door. So our 3 kids are at 2 different schools, and then the 2 who are at the same school are at 2 different campuses.
Wow.
And it is just ridiculous trying to get them out the door and get them to school. So I have gotten back into the mode. I was like this when I was younger, of doing everything the night before.
Yes.
So even, whatever, just doing it all the night before and packing all of the lunches, getting everything lined up by the door. And I used to always make fun of food preppers, like, oh, that's just dumb. And what I realized, it can be a sandwich, it can be leftovers. Yeah. It can be just having everything ready, because inevitably the next morning something's going to happen. Yeah. This morning I had timed everything just right. And I got done with my run right when I wanted to, with my strength training right when I wanted to, got in the shower exactly on time. And I'm like, I am awesome. I am going to get the kids out the door without screaming my head off at somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm getting dressed for work, and in comes kid number 2, my 7th grader. And he was like, oh, Mom, I couldn't finish my homework last night. So I need you to sit down with me right now and help me with these 2 math problems. I was like, what? No. And he's like, come on, Mom. And it's 7th grade math. So it was like rational numbers and irrational numbers. Yeah, and so then I had to stop, and I had to get out my phone and Google again for the 3rd time in my life. Cause my 3rd time taking 7th grade math now.
Oh my word.
Right. And so it blew everything, all my time schedule. Because I wasn't going to send him to school with his incomplete homework, and he had tried. Right. So then I'm there, whatever, finishing his homework with it. Yes, it was. So our schedule was blown. It was like, this is why we have lunches packed the night before. We have everything on a schedule, because mornings will never, if you have just 1 kid, mornings will never go the way they're supposed to.
I love it. So
and if you have 3,
then it's just shot altogether.
No, it's just shot. Yeah.
It never stood a chance.
Nobody's ever happy when they leave our house in the morning. All 5 of us are always in a bad mood.
So you're planning and doing your things ahead of time the night before is what is semi-saving your life right now.
Yes. Yeah. And if you don't like being a planner, just do it during the school year. Yeah. And then take a break. At summer, we take a break from all of our rules in the summer. If the kids want to stay up all night, stay up all night. If you want to eat junk food every day, eat it. If you want to play video games, do it. You have the rest of your life to work hard.
Yeah.
So do that.
I like that balance. Work-life balance. I love it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, again, it was so great to talk to you. I think there's a lot of wisdom in this episode, and we know our listeners are going to enjoy it so much. So once again, thanks for being on this
You're welcome.
Professional podcast.
Thanks. You have a good day.
You too.